Doing a tech startup is profoundly unhealthy. I don't know how many people know that. But I was probably working 18-hour days, maybe 20-hour days, pretty regularly.
Alex, I'm pretty excited to talk this week because we're bringing on someone who we've known him for what? When did Flex start?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Brennon when it started. But we were one of the first ones not one of the first ones, but like early adopters to this dental software, right? That helped us a lot. And what it did for us is it was awesome because I think the main feature we liked from it is that it took how we were doing our treatment plans and did it in like a digital version. And I remember like that was like the selling point for us. We were like, oh yeah, sweet, we should do this. But anyways, just like I feel like any friend I've made in like the last, 4 years, right? They're all like digital friends at first. So it's like so many people I know now, like we've just gotten to know through just like messaging and like, oh, we use your stuff. But like so many of us have never even met in person. It's so weird nowadays, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But I wanted to bring Brennon on because we were always inspired, especially with us like trying to work on all our side businesses and crap right now. Like he's someone who built a tech startup in dental, grew it, made a lot of money, and was able to sell it. And so I felt like it would be really cool just to share like his story on
kind of like behind the scenes and stuff. Yeah, that'd be cool.
So we forced Brennon to come on here to talk to us. So Brennon, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So I don't know. So for those who don't know, right, give us like the 3-sentence thing on Flex and what it is.
So just to clarify, I'm no longer part of the company, but when I built the product, it was a communication platform. We integrated with Open Dental. And the idea was to facilitate and make things easier to interact and communicate with patients.
Nice.
You said that succinctly. That would have taken me like 10 minutes. So nice job. I gotta learn that from you. Okay, so yeah, let's start back like day one on it, because like I feel like a lot of like dental tech startup founders, their significant other is a dentist usually, right?
Mm-hmm. Or because yeah, your wife's a dentist. She had an office, but what's your background? Are you coding, for other things, or where did that come from?
Yeah, so that's a good question. When I started the company, it was back in 2018. We had opened our practice around 2017. The build out took much longer than we were expecting. So it was, the exact timeline gets a little bit murky. We had opened our practice and I had some background in tech, but not in terms of building software. It was mostly on the analytics side of things. So I was tasked with finding all the software for our practice. And we had picked Open Dental. And then we were trying to find ways to communicate with patients. It was 2017. So everybody had a cell phone. Things were digital. That was the expectation, or at least that's what we had thought at the time. And I was having a really difficult time finding software that kind of fit what we were looking for. So we tried a lot of different platforms, had a lot of conversations like a lot of practices do. And I just couldn't find what we were looking for. We were using some in our practice, and I don't want to name names or anything like that. But we were just, generally unhappy with it. And so it was kind of a hold my beer moment where it's like, okay, honey, I think I can build something. Don't really know what I'm entirely doing going into this, but I think I can figure it out. So originally it was meant just for our practice. It was going to be something that, built and then implemented and then went back to my day job. Then eventually a couple dentists down the street heard about it and like, hey, can I use that? I'm like, sure, no problem, man. Just don't call me if you need anything because I'm at work. I can't provide support or anything like that. And it really just snowballed organically from there. People started posting on Facebook about, hey, look what it can do. This is really cool. And it just grew and grew and grew from there very organically.
So how many of your original users kind of came from that like breakaway model that we used, right? With like those, because I feel like a lot of us dentists who used it and a lot of our buddies, we all had open dental and we all did treatment planning like the same way.
Yeah.
So like, did you guys at your office also do that as well? And that's how you built that piece out?
Yeah, so you're talking about like the breakaway seminars and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I've heard that mentioned a few times. I've never actually been to one of their seminars or saw their treatment plan. We were just trying to find ways to make it simple for patients to understand. And at a certain point, somebody mentioned, hey, it would really be cool if you could put treatment options on here or payment options. And that's really what that grew out of, is just a client saying, hey, could you implement this?
Yeah.
And it was like, give me a day. And
wow.
Came back 24 hours later.
That's amazing. Because that's kind of what happened with us. So like we had, it was on our group, and someone in our Facebook group was like, hey, this is the thing to do. Because we all treatment planned a very similar way. We used Open Dental, but we never printed the treatment plan off of Open Dental. We always would take the information, put it into a spreadsheet, and it was in layman's terms. There was nothing technical on it, and it would have payment plans, deductions on like what your insurance would take, and options for pay now, save 3% or whatever it was, break this into monthly options or whatever, or care credit. So it was like our template that like 70 of us use in our group, but like way more.
Yeah.
So when one of our friends was like, this is the digital solution to this, and I don't know if he was one of the first ones to use it, probably was, we all jumped on board. Like, I think I booked a demo like that next day. I was like, oh, this is so cool. This is like exactly what our office needs.
So thanks.
Yeah. So thanks about that. But going back to it, so did you have to learn how to code in order to do this?
I did. So, I had some background in tech, so I don't want to present it as if,
you're just some dumb dentist like us trying to learn to code. Yeah.
Yeah. But my background was mostly in analytics. So creating pretty charts, a lot of SQL, which is like a language to interact with databases, which is very different from, more traditional programming languages like Java or Python or JavaScript or something like that. So I had to, that is the aspect I had to learn, was software development, how to build out a UI, which if you saw some of the kind of the earlier days of Flex was a little bit rough at times. It did improve dramatically.
We could use it. We can use the word basic, right? Simple, but still work.
No,
I mean, it
no
still
frills.
Worked.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, but it was a long process and a very difficult process to try and learn and absorb all that information. And it's pre-AI days, so I couldn't ask ChatGPT for the answer.
Yeah. So like, how long? Just so I understand too, or anyone who's like, hey, I might want to start a business or do anything like that. From when you had like the idea and you're like, I'm going to start implementing it, how long did it take you to go from that to at least just having it functional in your wife's office?
It was pretty quick, to be honest. It's probably about 6 months that it took.
Okay.
And that was, working nights and weekends and that sort of thing. But as my wife will tell you, I tend to get a little bit, hate to use the word, but obsessive about certain things. So nights and weekends, it was probably like 8 hours a night that I was working on it, and then all weekend. So it was more like a second job at that point than more of a side gig.
Was this just so? Did it come from just like when you had this idea? Did it come from you just being a great husband and you were like, I just want to provide a solution for my wife, or was it also I see potential in this and there could be a lot of money in this? Like what motivated you to like have that second job?
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, there was, I want to take credit and for being a good husband, but it was also somewhat selfish in that I was the one often presenting treatment to patients. And so I was trying to make my own life simpler at the same time.
Yeah.
And I also
Wait,
saw
so
that,
was your other job then at the office? Is that what it was?
Yeah. So like nights and weekends, I would also be at the practice, and, I'd be sitting there coding when we didn't have patients. Since it was a startup, it, starts off a little bit slow. So I'd be up at the front desk writing code.
Okay. Yeah.
So you just like
I
wore
was
a lot
the
of the
one
hats.
typically presenting treatment in the early days,
Yeah.
especially on weekends. So, we were open Saturdays. just trying to get anything we could to get new patients in the
Yeah.
door. You're scrappy. You guys know how it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was that guy.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, you saw a need for treatment plans to be simpler, quicker, and something like easily reproducible so that it wasn't just like you. And that was our problem too. It's like on those spreadsheets, it was like training someone to do it correctly and not like mess up the numbers each time. So yeah, that helped us.
So like, do you feel too? Because we were looking back at it too, and like, there's certain companies we've always used in dental like for years, right? Like, I feel like everyone in dental always jokes. It's like you start with a company and like maybe the lifespan is like a year before you try something new, right? I feel like we jump ship and like follow the bandwagon really easily, but like Flex is one of the ones that like we started and we never jumped off of it, right? Because it did what it needed to do. Our team, the other thing too is our team always liked it, and I will say I wanted you to kind of like go into like, because one of the biggest things we thought was like your customer service was always really good, which I'm sure with a startup was a lot of just you, right? Like I remember
It was you and a couple guys. Yeah. Yeah. I remember calling them and talking to the same guys every time. I'm like, it's me again.
But like, so when you were building this out, how much of this did you like, are you the type that like planned out before and you're like, okay, I'm going to do Flex Dental in the next 12 months. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. I want to focus on customer service. I want to have this core value. I want to have this. Or are you just more like, let's just figure it out as we go? Like, how did that happen?
Oh, far more the latter.
Okay.
It was very, we'll figure this out as we go. It was a new thing to me, and I'd never built a software company before. If I were doing it again, I feel I'd be more regimented because I would know what to expect and when to hire and who to hire and that sort of thing. But going into it, no, you're learning on the fly, kind of shooting from the hip, so to speak. So yeah, starting off, I knew that I would get frustrated if I called a company and they're like, hey, let me call you back. And they call back 20, 30 minutes later, but then you have a patient in front of you. Or if it's a doctor calling, the doctor's now with a patient. So kind of one of my core principles was if you called for help or you chatted in or emailed, you get a response. You need to actually speak to somebody. So that was actually something that we heavily invested in. I hired probably 7 or 8 guys on support before we ended up hiring our first developer, which is abnormal for a software company.
Yeah.
But that was always one of our biggest categories of spend was support, just to create that experience for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was smart. Especially because you said that was a pain point that I think a lot of us have with other companies is like there either wasn't support or it was like an afterthought. And so maybe that was kind of just one of those things where you just had a pain point that probably like every other dentist has and it wasn't getting met. And then it kind of like just kind of fell into place where it was actually really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Because how fast did it grow?
So it depends on the year a little bit. Initially, it was kind of a slow burn. Like it was growing very predictably every month, which was fairly intentional.
What's predictable?
I'd say it was probably. I'm trying to think of like in percentages. It was probably doubling in size. After the first year, it kind of doubled in size over the next year.
Okay.
From like year 1 to 2.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be cagey, but I also don't want to give like exact numbers.
Sure.
Yeah.
That we were looking at. Right around the time COVID hit is when things just got explosive. And I think part of that, or one of the large driving forces, was everything now needed to be, hey, I need you to fill out this COVID form, but I can't be anywhere close to you, so I need to text it to you.
Yeah.
And we were one of the few that enabled for that to happen. So it was, the first month when the closures happened, it was a lot of, are we going to be a company in 6 months? Like, what does this mean for us? And I'm sure you guys were in that same situation. Yeah. I had employees asking me like, hey, are we going to have jobs? And I gave them the best answer I could, which was, I'm not sure. I'm not laying anybody off. We're going to do this as long as we can. And then the next month when things started to reopen is we were just booked solid with demos.
So where did you where was that coming? Like, were cause you guys never did any marketing, right? Like, I
Right.
guess like traditional marketing of like putting out ads and doing that. So it was literally, that was just word of mouth.
It's all word of mouth, the Facebook groups primarily. Um, yeah, we didn't do any sort of like sponsorships of Facebook groups either. It was all organic.
Wow.
Dude, you took like
That's
the
awesome.
opposite approach to I feel like so many people do, where it's like sponsor as much as you can, do this, and you guys were just like, I guess you just let your product speak for itself.
Yeah, we were a product-led company. That's where we put all of our resources into, is making a better product. And you mentioned that your team was, normally like the lifespan's about a year, and it seemed like they were consistently happy. That part was very intentional. It's this constant iteration. Like if you kind of stagnate in software, if you're not building out new features or improving on existing ones, it goes south really quickly.
Yeah. No, and I think you did a good job of like listening to your users, because you had an office, right? And it's any of the problems or any of the changes and stuff, I mean, would directly affect you. And I think it was like, oh, I wish this could happen, or I wish I could be able to like customize this. And then next feature update, it was like, oh, able to customize. And I'm like, oh, sweet. This is awesome.
You guys were
We
good
tried
at
to
that.
scrap
And
it.
I would say what was nice is, and it wasn't just us, it was other people too, is if there was a feature people wanted, you guys were good about asking for user feedback, right? And then actually doing it. And I feel like that's the other thing too we would miss sometimes. It doesn't even matter if it's dental, it's just other products, right? Like, I think the other thing that you didn't, maybe it was more intentional, was always asking your users for what they wanted and then actually like delivering. I feel like that second piece gets missed so much. If you like our podcast, check out Alex's newsletter, Just 2 Minutes. It's full of great advice, which makes sense considering it's her thoughts and not me sidetracking her every 2 seconds. You can subscribe at coupleofdentists.com. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to the pod.
Yeah, and that it is a ton of work. Like it looks like it's fast and like it just magically appears, but it is a tremendous amount of work. I really can't understate.
Like how much were
it
you
takes out
how
of
much were you working like in those first few, like
all the time? Like it's doing a tech startup is profoundly unhealthy. I don't know how many people know that, but I was probably working 18-hour days, maybe 20-hour days, pretty regularly I'd say between like the first and between like year 1 and year 2, I took Christmas and my wife's birthday off, and that was it.
yeah.
So it was constant. Very, very early on, I was, taking support calls on my cell phone. It'd be, 4 a.m. Pacific time. I lived in California at the time, but on the East Coast, they're up, they're working.
Yeah.
So, I get woken up with phone calls, something's wrong.
So what's your okay? So many people, right? Like, and this is probably me because I'm probably more inherently I am more inherently lazy than Alex, right? Or you definitely, Brennan. Is like, have you always had like motivation to just like do it, or do you see things very like black and white, where it's like, if I want this result, this is what I do, and then you almost like cut out noise? Like, where did that come from to actually do that? Because so many companies the founder wouldn't get up at like 4 a.m. all the time to do it.
I would like to say that it's, this profound vision. Honestly, I think it's more of my nature. I'm kind of a people pleaser. And I felt this intense obligation, both to clients that put their trust in me, but then also employees. Their livelihoods now relied on the performance of the company. And starting out, the founder is a big component of that. So it was really out of that sense of obligation to everybody that would cause me to work those insane hours.
Wow. Yeah,
See, that's nice.
take notes.
Well, see, I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah,
too,
you
and
are
I'm
a people pleaser,
And I'm
yeah.
still like, snooze. Leave me alone.
It's not always
There's more
that
to
way.
it, Brennan. I think, yeah. There's that people pleaser part, but like you actually do it. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you pretty much had the company then, and if there any points where you're like, yeah, I can't talk specifics, that's cool, because I get when you're selling
Yeah.
a company and doing all that, there's stuff that obviously has to stay like under wraps.
Confidential, yeah.
Yeah, but you had the company. You said you started at 2018.
Mm-hmm.
At what point during that, or was it like the whole time, where you were like, at some point, I'm probably gonna like I need to sell this at some point? Like, did it become too much, or like
Yeah,
what?
did that come from you, or did you get approached?
Yeah. So, you know, my wife and I had spoken about it before because we had many conversations where she's looking at me like, "How long are you going to do this for?" Um, because it'd be 2 o'clock in the morning, and she's like, "Hey, you're here sitting at a computer staring at code. Um, you know, this isn't maintainable."
Yeah.
So we had discussions, and I'd been approached, several times. Kind of, I'd say 2019, 2020 is when things really started to get a little bit crazy. Once, you know, things started to reopen, interest rates were so low that a lot of the private equity firms were just, chomping at the bit to get invested in the space. There wasn't a whole lot of competition in kind of the patient communication niche at the time. It's there's a lot more now, but at the time, it was, especially if you used Open Dental, it seemed like the kind of the two ones
Yeah.
to go to were either Flex or Medento,
Yeah.
and they had a good product too, but they were the ones we were always competing with. So there was a lot of interest in getting into that space because dental is kind of a reliable and growing industry in general, and it's predictably profitable. So at that point, I was getting approached probably 2 or 3 times a week by different private equity firms.
Oh,
Wow.
geez.
I still do
Okay.
today through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So it's, there's still interest.
Yeah.
Even though I'm no longer part of the company, they're
Yeah.
still reaching out.
So, okay, that's interesting. So they like, I guess the question is, they were probably maybe putting out feelers because you're a private company. So how do they know how many like users you have? Or are they just like, hey, we know you exist, and we've done a little bit of like background research that there's definitely people talking about you. Was it just more like an intro call? They wanted to find out more?
That's exactly what it is. And sometimes it can be competitive research. They're looking at a competitor, and they're trying to find out who you are and what they're up against. So there's an element of that. Um, but yeah, they'll hear names. They're scouring through LinkedIn and Google, probably in the Facebook groups too, would be my guess. Um,
Yeah.
but I still I don't know how they manage to do this. I don't know where they find it. I still get calls on my cell phone
Oh,
from
wow.
guys, and my cell phone isn't like publicly listed anywhere to my knowledge, but they find
It
it.
is somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
someone has it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they find a way. But yeah, it's feeler calls to kind of gather that information from you.
Okay. So then back 2020, you start getting these calls, and then I'm guessing you probably started talking to your wife about it. Was there some turning point where you were like, all right, I'm going to go from just like taking these calls to like, we're coming up with a game plan on selling?
Yeah, I think it was a point where I felt that the company was self-sustaining. It had grown enough and had hired enough employees that I didn't feel like I was letting people down by taking a step away. Like that was a big component to it. I wanted to feel like both my clients and my employees were in good hands, rather than just like, hey, I got paid, so whatever, guys.
Yeah.
That obligation still I still felt that. So once I got the company into that position, I felt like now would be a good time to kind of separate myself, and take a little bit of a vacation.
Yeah.
Nice.
So does that work? I mean, does that process work similar to like selling like for dentists, like if you're selling your practice, like do you hire
Like a broker,
like
or
more
how
like
does
an
that work?
investment
Yeah.
banker and they help you find deals, and is it a similar process, and then you're almost like vetting out different companies? And because
Yeah.
right now
So
we're going and
yes.
our DSO is going through like a recap, right? So like we only know so much because we're just partners in there, but they hire an investment firm, they get all their numbers aligned, they get everything like ready to go, and then you're almost like pitching yourself to these firms and they're going through and doing it. Is that how that worked?
Yes, I've done a grand total of one of these, so
Yeah.
I can
So
only speak from my personal experience. But yeah, you hire an attorney, kind of first and foremost. You can't hire an investment banker; they're extremely expensive to bring on since they take a percentage of the deal. I'm not
okay.
sure
Yeah.
entirely how it works in dental,
Yeah. No, it's the same way. Most brokers in dental, they'll take a percentage of, and they'll take a percentage of the enterprise value, right? So like, I think that's one good clarification. And I didn't mind it. Like for us personally, like the broker we used, we got a way better deal than we would have if we didn't use one. So I'm not saying I'm anti it. I'm actually for it. But I didn't realize at first when he's like, I don't know what the numbers were, but let's just say it was like 5%, right? I think a lot of times it's maybe a little bit higher. But he would say, I'm taking 5% of the enterprise value. So that is, because we sold to a DSO, that was your EBITDA or your profit times the multiple, right? So even if the DSO paid you, or even if you were selling 51% of your business, his commission or her commission is still off of the total sale price, not the cash at close. And so that's where it becomes really expensive because technically they're incentivized. They want to get you the highest valuation, but they may not care what percentage you sell for, right? Sorry, that's my aside on that.
Yeah, so it works the same way.
Okay.
And tech sales, they're valued a little bit differently. So, EBITDA matters, but because so many tech companies are unprofitable, it's usually a multiple of your annual recurring revenue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's great. Growth is what's big, right? And what's the reason? So I always wondered, like, is the reason behind that, since you've done one and now are an expert in it, is it that they come in and they're like, now we're going to take the next phase of this and it's got the revenue. Now we're going to solve the issue of like monetizing it or like making it profitable. Is that like the pitch that they were getting?
Yeah. So Flex actually was profitable. So that, it was bootstrapped from day one. So it kind of had to be. I had personal savings, but I didn't have, a seed round and then Series A and Series B funding or anything like that. So we were kind of forced into a position that we needed to be self-sustaining.
Yeah.
I can, in general, though, broadly speaking, private equity is looking to, hey, we can trim here and we can, leverage other companies in our portfolio to expedite growth. They always think that they can make it grow faster. I think what was attractive about Flex is that we weren't doing marketing and we had all of this organic momentum and pretty awesome growth, especially given that we weren't spending any sort of money on marketing. So I do think that they saw an opportunity there. At least I would if I were in their shoes. So that's kind of what they were looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So how long did that process take?
It was pretty quick. From start to finish, maybe 6-7 months or so. Going through the due diligence process, I'm sure you guys went through a similar thing, but they want to go through absolutely everything.
Yeah. I mean, they, at least for us with like using a broker, you could give him the information and then he would do the work, right? Which was good. But like figuring out this expense, was this expense actually like you were a startup, right? And it was just you that had it. And it's like a lot of dental practice owners, it's just, it's a one guy or one girl who owns it. So like, was that Amazon expense? Was that a business expense, or did I accidentally do that as a personal one, right? And so I think you're trying to figure all that kind of stuff out. Or for you with revenue, right? It's like, was this all just from subscription, or did something else get added in here, or
We did have a very simple model though. So because we weren't doing any sort of annual contracts, it simplified things quite a bit from an accounting perspective. And that was, partly because I've never been a big believer in annual contracts. I never wanted anybody locked in. So even if we were doing an annual contract, if somebody had come to me and like, hey, I want to cancel, I would have just done it anyway. So it really didn't make sense to do that. A lot of people asked, but it was easier just to keep things kind of flat rate pricing. Everybody's paying the same amount. It's month to month entirely. You can walk away whenever you want.
That was a huge differentiator. That was a huge differentiator between like the other, like Solution Reach and Lightweight,
ones.
Whatever those other ones were.
I think it was just a lot of complaints people would have was that it was like, and it was just non-transparent, right? And I think you guys were always transparent with stuff. So, all right, I have another question for you. Did you, and I forgot if you did it with us or not, when you were doing pricing, did you grandfather people in? Like, did you say your price is going to stay the same, or would you creep up pricing?
So we never promised anybody that the prices would never change because I couldn't, and things are fairly unpredictable. Like text messages, people don't realize how expensive text messages actually are to
Mm-hmm.
send
Like,
because
how
they
much
think
is
of
a
their
text
cell
message
phone.
when you were doing it?
What's that?
How much is it to send a text message?
So it depends on the length of the text message and what you're
Okay.
sending. So if you're sending like an emoji, it makes it twice as expensive for some technical reasons.
Yeah.
But there's silly things like that. But on average, and it also depends on which carriers you're sending it to. So the carriers have different kind of surcharges. So if it's AT&T, it's a different price than Verizon. But on average, it's about 3 cents ish a text
Yeah.
message. I'd say ballpark,
Wow.
Yeah.
which adds up very, very quickly, especially if you're sending 6, 7, 8,000 a month.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll see limits on a lot of software. I think Weave, if I get this wrong, I think it's like 5,000 a month, and they start to charge you more
Okay.
because the costs do build up so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to answer your question, we never promised any pricing, but we also never raised the price on anybody while I was there. I don't know what's happened since then, so I can't speak to
Yeah.
that. But while I was there, we never increased the price on anybody.
Yeah, I've heard that it's important though to say that you don't promise it, because I would think if you promised a price, then if someone was buying you, they would probably discount you a little bit, because if someone signed into some contract where we're never going to raise it, then they would say, well, I can't potentially raise the price on this person. So,
Yeah. It's also
okay.
just dangerous from a business perspective. Some things it's unrealistic to guarantee a price for forever,
Yeah.
especially when it's a recurring every month like thing, because your costs can be variable. So we
Yeah.
didn't want to end up in that position. So we got as close as we could to, I'll promise you this price, by never actually increasing the price on anybody, even if we were kind of losing a little bit of money on some of those early clients as we rolled out new features. But we couldn't guarantee it.
Yeah. I mean, how scared were you that everything would just crash one day, right? Like, so many dentists, I feel like, maybe I just have this because I'm more of a worrier. We were listening to something recently, and it was like there's different like personality traits that everyone has, and one of the like spectrums on it is like neuroticism and like how much you worry. And I was like, I'm definitely high on that, right? Like, I'll spiral fast on stuff. And I think as dentist owners, right, either when like COVID hit, or if you lose an associate or you lose an employee, you're like, it's all gonna go to crap. Like, did you have, like, is that your personality? Did you have a constant fear, or were you pretty confident like this is gonna be fine?
I didn't have a fear that everything would just collapse one day. Um, I did have a base level of anxiety the entire time of not moving fast enough. Like, even
Okay.
though, by most standards, we were moving very, very quickly.
Yeah.
It was always that, like, hey, somebody's going to spring up and just, beat us to the punch, and they'll drive us out of business by being so much better. That was
Yeah.
always kind of in the back of my
Yeah.
mind, kind of pushing me forward.
And did that make any like decision when you decided like, hey, I might sell? Was that like a factor in it that you're just like, yeah, this is a lot of time. I need to have a little bit more, like, maybe like my wife's telling me like I need to like have an exit ramp off this thing, but also like the timing is just good. Was that part of it too?
Yeah, it was good timing. The multiples were getting pushed up because of you know how low the interest rates were, and I felt like the company was in a good position. And at that point, like I pretty much just run myself ragged
Yeah.
over the years, so it was a good point to kind of ride off into the sunset.
That's cool. So I mean, like, broadly speaking, right? Because I know not asking you to speak on specifics. Do
Yeah.
those type of deals work similar to like when a dentist says they're going to sell to like a DSO versus a private dentist, where they may not buy 100% of your company, but if they do, there's like earnouts, there's all these extra things. Is that, like I said, generally speaking, is that how a lot of these deals work?
They can. It doesn't have to, though. So I mean, it really goes both ways. You know, try not to get into specifics, but yes, it could have an earnout. It may not. You can roll equity. You can be a complete buyout. It really just depends on the specifics of the deal.
I mean, like, did they really want? Because you said it was like self-sustaining without you, right? And you
Yeah.
really, I never felt like you were like the face of the company in the sense that like there's a big picture of Brennon in front of Flex, right? Like, that just wasn't it. Like, we talked to you all the time, right? But it felt like you had made yourself pretty replaceable in a positive way.
Yeah.
Um, so like, if that's the case, then I mean, does the PE firm, like, if they feel like they can handle your operations, like, they don't really need you, right?
Yeah, and I mean, historically, usually the founder ends up leaving shortly after the acquisition happens for one reason or another. Typically, they're forced out. I'd like to think I wasn't, and it was my decision.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know. Maybe they thought differently. Um, but I wanted to leave on really good terms. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I'm not sure where I was going with that.
No, no.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
So, all right. So for dentists listening, right? What are some like what are some principles that you feel like you did with Flex that you're like, I am glad we did that. That worked out. And like, as a dentist, do that in your practice.
Oh, that's a good question. I would say kind of the closest carryover is to really focus on, what they call your core competencies. What are you good at? And then really push on that. So you guys mentioned treatment plans a lot, which I feel is something that we were really good at. And I would also include forms in that. And that was
Yeah.
something that we kind of hammered in, like anytime we were doing demos or presentations. That's really what we were focusing on is what our strengths were. And that seems obvious, but a lot of companies in this space try to do absolutely everything under the sun. And I understand why that is, especially given everything kind of consolidating in the dental tech space. But your differentiators are, those things that you do better than anybody else.
No, that's good. That's true. I mean, my buckle pits.
I was just gonna say,
do those all day.
I was like, I don't know if that's good advice for Eric.
Yeah. No, thanks.
Then he just
You're telling
does
me
like
what I wanna hear.
he
I don't
just
have to
does
do
like
any of
the
hard
four
stuff.
things,
Yeah.
during the day.
The four least productive things.
But it doesn't even necessarily have to be, your class two fillings. It can be,
Yeah.
how you interact with patients. I mean, charisma goes a very long way in dentistry. I don't think that gets spoken about enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I mean, people do business with ones they like, right? And,
yeah.
And I think you just have a baseline assumption that like your dentist is competent, right? Like I think that's just like a thought everyone has, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to convince as much.
On the patient side, I don't know,
Yeah.
coming into it, I wouldn't have known like what's a good crown from a bad crown. Like
Yeah.
it all looks the same to, the untrained eye. So it's mostly going to be on that interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like hell, even when like you explaining this now, like, on my end when we were using Flex, I think we just based it on like, does it work or not work? Like we don't know how like I don't know that
That's
you're up till
terrible,
2 a.m.
yeah.
like coding everything, right? And so I think as long as like it worked and it's fine, then like no one knows what's going on in the background.
Yeah, I mean, in my defense, working till 2 a.m. isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, all you guys care about, and rightfully so, is does it work and does it do what I need it to?
Yeah.
And I understood that.
Yeah. And just like even creating the brand of it. Like, cause I remember when you guys came out with online scheduling, I don't even think I thought twice. I was like, sign me up. Like just whatever Flex comes out with, whatever add-on,
That's
just
good.
do it.
And
Just-
I think
just
that's
get
an
it.
important part too. And maybe maybe like this goes back to your dental office too, is like it's building like that bank, right, of like positivity or like performance that you've done it before. So like with Flex, right, like the treatment plans work. Yeah, there'd be bugs sometimes, but it was to the point where it would work well so often that you had done a good job of almost with like your customers of building up that trust. So like if something small did happen, no one was pissed, right? Like no one would really get angry, or at least we weren't. Maybe other people were. Dentists are weird, but so then you kind of built that brand, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, of like we put out good stuff. So whenever you come out with another feature, I would imagine you probably had pretty good buy-in.
We did, especially online scheduling. That we had just released it, and then COVID hit, and so as a way to, help, but then also kind of selfishly keep people within the ecosystem, we just released it for free to everybody.
Yeah, I remember that,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's pretty sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a difficult time for everybody. So we were doing what we could. Like we offered to, we'd freeze payments or do half off. We had all these different plans
Yeah.
depending on what the office needed at the time. I know some companies did absolutely nothing and they got raked over the coals on Facebook for that.
Yeah.
But we were trying to do everything that we possibly could to make life as simple as possible for you guys because we knew what you were going through. So we released online scheduling to everybody for free. And then once things started to reopen, I think it was like 4 or 5 months later, then we started charging for it. It's like a higher tier package. But we did have a lot of buy-in. I think for two reasons. One, we always, wanted things to work seamlessly for the office. But then we didn't put out anything that we wouldn't use ourselves. So like in our own practice, absolutely everything that we put out was something that we personally used. And that was really important. If we didn't want to use it, we didn't want to release it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of like, it just seems like you were always playing the long game, right? In a good way, right? And when we had Mark on recently, Costas, he kind of gave us some advice that kind of stuck with me as like really early on when you're either like building your dental practice, or I think he was referencing it in terms of like if you're building like your dental influencer career, right? Or whatever that is. And you have to figure out really early on, are you going to take like the quick money, or are you playing like a 5-10 year, whatever it is, game? And you need to decide that early on and then just stick with it. And I feel like a lot of the decisions you guys made, like you said, maybe intentional, not intentional, but it definitely, like, it seems like it paid off.
We all know Eric wants more friends. If you're enjoying this episode, share the podcast and then tell them to DM Eric so he can hit his quota of 1 new friend per day. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, and it was intentional to grow slowly and sustainably. I mentioned that earlier. And one of the reasons we didn't do Facebook deals is we wouldn't be able to handle the influx of new clients. It had to be this kind of predictable and measured growth. If we all of a sudden had 1,000 people that wanted to sign up, like, yeah, the revenue would be great, but I didn't have the staff to support that. We couldn't onboard that many clients. We couldn't train them. I didn't have the support team. And then to spin up new support agents would take longer. They would be unhappy. They would tell their friends. So it would kind of be this perpetuating the snowball effect. So, to Mark's point, yeah, you need to kind of take it slow and steady and play the long game in that regard. Otherwise, it can cause some problems.
Yeah. Let's shift for a second. So what if Flex was created not in 2018, but today?
Yeah.
And we have all these tools like AI and all this stuff. How would that have changed what Flex is today, or what Flex could have been?
I think building it from, starting Flex today would be a much bigger challenge because of how consolidated the industry, like Flex as a company and as a product, has grown significantly since, 2018. Mm-hmm. And all of them have. Like if you look at competitors like Dental Intel, I think Adit is another one where it's like phones are starting to be incorporated. Everybody has online scheduling. Everybody does payments now. So building it, especially as a kind of a one-man type situation, would be a much bigger task. And I'm not sure if that's as realistic to do today as it was back then.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So then you sold, and then we also want to assume, did you just like ride off into the sunset? Have you been doing anything?
Yeah, so I originally did plan to just ride off into the sunset, and I thought I would be, really happy being retired, and I have been happy. My life's awesome. I have a little boy right now with another little girl on the way, so everything's awesome there. I'm getting a little bored though, so I imagine within the next year or so, I'll probably get back into something. I haven't really decided exactly what that something will be. But I am getting the itch a little bit to get back into dental.
Nice. I mean, I feel like that's what happens is you hear all these stories about people who like they have an exit or they sell, and I think a lot as dentists like we get into this like, and this is what I got into, right? Was, oh, I'm going to make enough with my practices, and then I'm going to sell the practices, and then you just have passive income, and then you have freedom, right? And I'm like, that's what everyone thinks they want. But you kind of find that I think the concept of, oh, it's just all passive, maybe is a little bit oversold, and it's not as easy as it sounds, right? Stock markets change, investments can change, right? Stuff like that. And someone like you who's already like entrepreneurial and likes to build stuff, like it just doesn't fit you. Like you'd probably be unhappy if like for the next 20 years you just kind of hung out, right? You
Yeah,
almost like it's kind of like a blessing and a curse a little bit,
Yeah, I'm 39. I don't play golf. So there's an element of like, well, what do you do with your time then?
Yeah.
And I love spending time with my family. It's awesome. But there's a certain, I guess, mental stimulation you get from work
Yeah.
that I felt was missing a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, do you feel
so
like you go into any more like, because the same thing, just because it was top of mind and we had Mark on recently, is he went, when he sold and like hit his goals, he went into more of a, he said, like purpose driven, right? Like, do you find yourself like, do you think more like, do you have more like existential crises now and like more like, like what is life?
No, that's a really interesting question. Right after the sale of the company, I would say yes, where it's like, what do I do with myself now? Because before that, it's all, okay, you get an education. Why are you getting an education? So you can get a job. Why do you get a job? So you can make money, so you can survive. And it's kind of creates this loop, so to speak. So then there is an element of, you sort of break out of that loop. And
Yeah.
I know this sounds like a very first world problem, and it absolutely is. I
Yeah.
recognize that. But yeah, what do you do with yourself, and like what is the purpose going forward? What am I supposed to do? So you start asking like very philosophical questions. Um,
Oh, I know. I don't think I've told Alex, but there's been some times where like at 11 o'clock, I'll message, we'll be like DMing each other on like Facebook stuff, and it's like some deep conversation. And I'm like, oh man, now I'm questioning life. I was like, this is good though. But I was like, oh, okay, at least someone else has these thoughts too.
you're
I
not
am
alone.
asleep.
You're not alone.
Yeah, she's asleep with a
I'm
baby.
asleep
So
with a bunch
you're-
of kids, and
Yeah, so you're really never asleep. You're always like half awake.
I haven't slept
right?
in years.
Yeah.
But
No, I get that. So what did you do after? We were joking before. We were like, when we talked to you last, like a couple weeks ago on Google Meet, we both afterwards were like, oh, Brennon looks like he's in good shape. His arms look pretty good.
Yeah. So right after we traveled a lot, my wife and I.
Okay.
She'd been all gas for so long. It was okay. You need to go to college, and then out of college you go to dental school. Then you
Yeah.
start working, and then you start a practice. And so we took that opportunity to travel. When we first got married, it kind of coincided with her opening the practice. So everything was like honeymoon's really abbreviated.
Yeah.
So we traveled a lot. I mentioned that running a tech startup is profoundly unhealthy in every imaginable way. So physical health, emotional, psychological, it takes its toll. So I got back into the gym. Like, I need to be healthy. We want to have kids. I need to be able to keep up with them and be around for them. So it was more of, working on myself after that.
So like, what were you doing when you were coding? Were you like the stereotypical person we think of, where it's like you had like your Diet Coke, which I know you said you drink, and like just like pizza and like candy and just shitty food, and it's just like that was your diet?
I am 1000% an addict of Diet Coke to this day. I will die on that hill. But aside from that, it was, you don't pretty much, you wouldn't eat all day. And then at night, like, you just get so hungry, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like, oh man, I haven't eaten all day. But then you just eat 3,000 calories of crap, like
Yeah.
whatever's in the fridge. And it's like, hey, I just need to eat and then go to sleep so I can wake up and do it tomorrow. So there was definitely an element of that, and just
Yeah.
general
Wait,
lack of sleep.
So were you always a Diet Coke person or not? Or did you like transition from Coke or Pepsi, which is like way better?
I became a Diet Coke So if you mean like Diet Coke versus Diet Pepsi,
Yeah,
I
I don't even think people debate that. Like, I hate all diet drinks, but like, I don't. Is there anyone who likes Diet Pepsi? Like, I only have
do
ever
they even
heard
have that
someone-
SKU? Do they still
Yeah,
sell it?
I don't know.
I don't mind it. It's
But you always
Either
like
one
diet
is
drinks,
fine with
like
me.
even as a kid.
I grew up on drinking. We are a Pepsi household.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I go too. Yeah,
And then right at kind of the tail end of high school, I was really overweight growing up. I was a very large kid. And then at the tail end of high school, I lost a ton of weight. and I switched over to Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi at the time, and I've never looked back.
So that's your
I'm
your
making
case
every
study
dentist
for
cringe right
diet.
now.
So we're gonna send this to Coca-Cola, and we're gonna say Brennan lost all weight due to Diet Coke. I'm like, see, that's funny.
I'll be the new face of Coke.
I know, right? Well, no, and I never realized too, because we can just continue on this aside on soft drinks or pop, depending on where you're from.
Yeah.
That until I met Alex, and she's Canadian, right? Like, it seems like everywhere else in the world, their Coke or Pepsi is way different than ours in terms of like the sugar, right? Like we always use like the high fructose corn syrup, and you guys just use like cane sugar, right? Like what you think of as like Mexican Coke, right? When you get that. And so their stuff is not as sweet. Yours does not seem as carbonated, and it doesn't seem as sweet.
Really?
That's what I don't think. I think it's like
It does taste different.
Yeah, it tastes dialed down a little bit.
Yeah. It's better in general.
See, I don't know. I don't think it's better. That's just me. Have you ever would you have a preference? Is Diet Mexican Coke better than Diet Coke America?
So I've never had Diet Mexican Coke. I had Coke Light in Europe, and then they have a lot of Coke Zero.
Okay.
Which Coke Zero isn't bad. It doesn't taste the same to me, though. I don't think it's intended to. But I prefer Diet Coke over like Coke Light or Coke Zero. But and a
What is it,
pinch,
like the
any
sweetener?
of it
What's the
will do.
sweetener what's the sweetener in Diet Coke? Is it stevia?
I think it's just
No,
aspartame.
aspartame.
It's aspartame.
Yeah.
Oh, so you get that. See, you don't mind the aspartame taste?
Yeah,
Ugh,
I can't
ugh.
do it.
I've become so accustomed to it; it doesn't bother me.
Aspartame.
Yeah, craving that. Cool.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story with us. This is cool for us, right? Just to hear kind of the behind the scenes of like Flex and how you started and all that stuff. Because like I said, we always loved it and we were early adopters to it. So it's cool to hear like how you did it. And then we'll have to like have future discussions on life and just philosophical stuff. Next podcast.
Nice, Eric.
Just depress people.
What is life?
Yeah.
What to do?
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome.